Puddle Lane, 3 wishes and 1 more. 3 wishes and 1 more. Jennifer Jane lived in Puddle Lane. She lived with her grandmother in a little house halfway down the lane. Jennifer's grandmother always called her Jenny. Jennifer Jane lived in Puddle Lane. She lived with her grandmother. Jennifer Jane had a magic wishing penny. If she held the magic penny in her hand and wished, the wish came true. Jennifer Jane kept the magic penny in an old china shoe on the shelf over the fireplace. A china shoe is the safest place for a magic penny, said grandmother. Jennifer Jane had a magic penny. Grandmother put it in a china shoe. One winter's evening, grandmother was going out. I shall be home late, Jenny, said grandmother. Have supper on the table when I come back. I will, said Jennifer Jane. If you use the magic penny, remember this, said grandmother. You must never wish more than 3 times in any one day. If you do, the penny will vanish away. I will remember, grandmother, said Jennifer Jane. I won't forget. Grandmother said, have supper on the table when I come back. Grandmother went out. Jennifer Jane put on an apron and tidied up the house. Then she began to lay the table all ready for supper. The grandfather clock struck 6 o'clock, but grandmother had not come home. Jennifer Jane put on her apron. The grandfather clock struck 6 o'clock. Jennifer Jane began to feel lonely. She went to the window and pulled back the curtains. It was very dark in Puddle Lane. There was no one about at all. Jennifer Jane went to the window. She looked out into Puddle Lane. It was very dark in Puddle Lane. The grandfather clock struck 7 o'clock and still grandmother had not come home. I must do something, said Jennifer Jane. She went to the fireplace and climbed on a stool. She took down the china shoe. She took out the silver penny and held it in her hand. She went to the window and looked out into Puddle Lane. It was very dark. I wish there were lanterns in Puddle Lane, said Jennifer Jane. The grandfather clock struck 7 o'clock. Jennifer Jane got the china shoe. She took out the magic penny. I wish there were lanterns in Puddle Lane, she said. The next moment, beautiful colored lanterns were hanging outside the houses in Puddle Lane. Some of them were blue and some of them were green. Some of them were yellow and some of them were red. It's lovely, cried Jennifer Jane. Now grandmother can see the way when she comes home in the dark. There were beautiful lanterns in Puddle Lane. Some lanterns were blue. Some lanterns were green. Some lanterns were yellow. Some lanterns were red. Jennifer Jane stood at the window looking out into Puddle Lane. The grandfather clock struck 8 o'clock and still grandmother had not come home. It was very bright in Puddle Lane, but it was very quiet. I know, cried Jennifer Jane. I know what I'll do. She held the magic penny in her hand. I wish for some music, said Jennifer Jane. I wish there was music in Puddle Lane. The grandfather clock struck 8 o'clock. Jennifer Jane said, I wish there was music in Puddle Lane. The very next moment there was a man in Puddle Lane. He was playing the violin. He was rather a strange-looking man. He was dressed in silver and red. but he was playing such a dancing tune that Jennifer Jane began to dance. She dropped the magic penny into the pocket in her apron. She opened the door and danced out into Puddle Lane. Jennifer Jane danced. She opened the door and danced out into Puddle Lane. The doors of the other houses opened, and all the people in Puddle Lane came out of their houses to dance. Sarah and Davy were there, and so were Harry and Geeta. Even old Mr. Gotobed woke up and came out in his nightcap to join in the dance. All the people in Puddle Lane came out of their houses to dance. Jennifer Jane looked down at her dress. She was still wearing her apron. I mustn't dance in an apron, said Jennifer Jane. She took the magic penny out of her pocket and held it in her hand. I wish to be dressed in a beautiful dress, the most beautiful dress in Candletown, said Jennifer Jane. Jennifer Jane had her apron on. I wish for a beautiful dress, she said. And the very next moment, Jennifer Jane was dressed in a beautiful dress. She went dancing up and down the lane, and everyone stopped to look at her. Jennifer Jane had a beautiful dress. She danced up and down the lane. She had nearly danced to the top of the lane when she saw her grandmother. Grandmother had just come into the lane at the other end. Jennifer Jane suddenly remembered that she had promised to have supper all ready when grandmother came home. Jennifer Jane saw grandmother come into the lane. Jennifer Jane put her hand in her pocket and took out the magic penny. I wish for supper, she said. Supper must be ready on the table before grandmother gets home. But that was the fourth wish. Jennifer Jane had had 3 wishes already. I wish for supper, said Jennifer Jane. Supper must be on the table. The very next moment, the lane was dark. The lanterns were gone. The music was gone. All the people went back into their houses. The lane was silent. Jennifer Jane and her grandmother were alone in the lane. Jennifer felt for the magic penny, but the magic penny had gone. So had her beautiful dress. She was dressed in her apron again. The lanterns were gone. The music was gone. All the people went back into the houses. Jennifer Jane ran to her grandmother. Oh, grandmother, grandmother, look what I've done, cried Jennifer Jane. I wished 4 times in one day and the magic penny is gone. I've lost the magic wishing penny. The tears ran down her face. Jennifer Jane ran to her grandmother. She began to cry. Grandmother put her arms around Jennifer Jane. Don't cry, Jenny, she said. Don't cry. We were very happy before you found the magic wishing penny. We don't need a magic penny. We can live very well without it. And you never know what may happen. You may find the penny again. Don't cry, Jenny. Come along in. I've brought a cherry pie home with me. We'll have that for supper. Don't cry, Jenny. Don't cry, said Grandmother. So Jennifer Jane and her grandmother both went into the house. The fire was burning in the grate and the table was laid for supper. Grandmother put the cherry pie on the table. Jennifer Jane dried her tears and they both sat down to supper. Jennifer Jane and her grandmother sat down to supper. One day when Jennifer Jane had the magic wishing penny, she held the penny in her hand and wished. She wished for someone to play with. There was a knock at the door. What do you think happened next? One day, Jennifer Jane wished for a chocolate cake. Take a piece of paper and draw for yourself what happened next.